Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 22 of Genre Blender, the podcast that celebrates all things storytelling. I'm Kris.
And I'm Ryan, and today's topic is a part two of memorable queer characters because last episode we just ran way too long because we clearly have a lot to say about the topic.
Pride 2, the Pridening.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Part two of a Pride Month special kind of collection of episodes, but this time around for books and video games because we didn't get a chance to talk about those. So yeah, kind of excited to do this. There's more on my list than I realized. I was kind of just having a look through before, getting ready for the episode. I was like, oh yeah, there's that one to add and that one. There's actually quite a few now, which is a great problem to have.
I think you may have more than I do, but I do have more that I can pull from. I was quite selective with the queer characters that I picked
Probably
initially.
sensible.
That's right, I'll cut us off at an hour.
Okay, good. You can be the timekeeper as
I'll be
usual.
timekeeper, yeah.
Perfect. Cool. But before we get to that, as always, we'll do a little bit of a read, watch, play. So yeah, what have you been reading, watching, and playing, my friend?
I have found a new game that has had me in a chokehold for the last week. No, it's not Fantasy Life. I am still playing it, but I put that on pause. So I got COVID last week, and Ryan and I got on and we did a multiplayer session, and that was fun. I haven't touched it since then, but I purchased a game called Sunhaven, which is like Stardew Valley meets D&D. So the game is so big. It's ridiculous. So yeah, I've really not done a whole lot else other than play Sunhaven, and I barely scratched the surface. I reckon I've got 10 to 12 hours in it in a week.
Oh wow.
So I haven't been reading a whole hell of a lot. I've just been playing that every spare second, but I do need to read because I have a thing coming up this week. So I've been playing Sunhaven. I did buy Gex, the trilogy, when it came out, and I played. So game 2 is the one that holds nostalgia for me, which is Enter the Gecko, and I played a little bit last night, but because it's so old, it's not an autosave, so you've got to save manually.
Oh, save points.
Yeah, so I have to make sure I was getting to save points, but I've since gotten old and motion sickness, so the real jerky camera movements. So I could play for about 45 minutes at a time before I felt ill. So I will play it because I'm stubborn, but it will probably be in short increments because, yes, it's very, very jerky, the camera movements.
Wow.
But such nostalgia for this little gecko in a tuxedo. I didn't realize how much potty humor was in it because I was a kid and probably that was really funny, but there's fart jokes and poo jokes in there. I was I don't remember that at all. From
nice. We can appreciate it now as an adult.
And I was well, I guess it was made for a younger audience, right? It's definitely a young boy game. Just the humor that's in there, yeah. Watching, I finished Devil May Cry. Episode 6 was so good that it just changed my rating and experience of the whole show. I was yeah, it's okay. I don't know if I'll watch season 2 or whatever. And then episode 6 was a different animation style. It was really done to the Amy Lee song, who wrote the song for the episode. Amy Lee, the lead singer of Evanescence.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And it was the backstory, and I'm a backstory sucker of the villain, so it was really, really good. In terms of reading, I picked up my first manga. So I've not read a manga before, but I read Gyot by Junji Ito, horror, and the reason that I picked this up is because Black Milk, the clothing company, did a t-shirt based on this manga, which had a shark on it. So this is called The Death Stench Creeps, and it is about, so basically this girl, Kaori, has trouble with smells, and then one day she's there's a terrible smell, and ends up being a dead fish on these stilt looking things, and it turns out the whole ocean is basically coming onto land on these stilt things. But I saved a page to showcase, which has got the hammerhead shark on it, which is really cool.
Nice.
So these stilts, and they're all coming out of the ocean. Anyway, it's some conspiracy war situation, and I was oddly reminiscent of my book. So that was really fun. I don't know that I'm a manga person, but it was fun to experience. And I started and finished Neuromancer.
What?
Yes.
You didn't tell me you were reading this?
I didn't for this reason, because I like watching your reactions on this.
Dude.
So I'm probably sitting at about a 3 to a 3.5 on it. Not my favorite, but that's the writing style. more than
Yes.
anything. I also had to go and read the wiki about halfway through because I'm like, am I getting this right or am I not? Because I did this on audio and I do not like the audiobook narrator who did this, which is
Can't
Jeff
do it. Yeah,
Harding.
no. Yeah.
He's not my favorite, but I'm like, the only way I'm going to get this in for a Cyberpunk chat is to do it on audio. So I enjoyed
Wow.
it. It's really cool to see some of the references that have come from this and have some
Yeah.
context for it, like the Matrix, which is really cool. So I enjoyed it, and I will continue on. I will go and read the second and third book in this, but I finally read it. So those are my read, watch, play updates for.
That's amazing. I had no idea that. You've just blown my mind a little bit. I For context, I didn't think you would actually like it. Like I wanted you to read it, but I didn't think you'd like it. So I'm pleased that you liked it enough. It is very specifically, for a certain kind of reader. Um, but I'm amazed you've read it, and you kind of don't need to read the others necessarily. It is complete enough in its own that you don't. The other ones are uh, it is a continuation. It is a trilogy, but they're also separate. So like you could leave them if you wanted.
I need to know what
Um,
happens with Molly though, because that was a very abrupt end that
sure.
we got in that last sentence, and like in the audiobook, because normally there's like an afterword and like about the author and stuff, and I was waiting for that and it just like cut
Mm.
off. It was like the end, goodbye, we're not doing anything else. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked it enough. I'm glad that I've read it now
Yeah.
because
Cool.
it gives me some context to the cyberpunk stuff that I liked, sort of seeing where that started. Yeah, what
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah. Wow. That's going to take me a while to recover from that. We're gonna talk about that in more detail at some point down the track. We're gonna watch this space. Um, what have I been? So reading and watching pretty much nada. I've been a living, breathing gaming machine lately. Apparently, I don't know what happened. Um, so I mean, since the Switch 2, although I haven't really been playing the Switch 2 that much, to be honest. I started playing Fire Emblem Three Houses, which has been on the top of my list for since it came out, probably, which I don't know how long ago, years ago now. Um, wasn't really sold on it, and I'm kind of devastated about that. I won't. I haven't put it down for good. I will pick it back up and play it some more, but I don't usually play tactical RPGs. Not my favorite. So I knew going into it, but it's a little bit. It's got that Persona vibe, that kind of school. You go and talk to people, and there's a calendar and that kind of thing. So I thought maybe that would I'd find that to latch onto, but yeah, really haven't. So we'll see. I'll come back to it, but yeah, wasn't really vibing with it right now. Still playing Clair Obscur Expedition 33, although I put it down for a little bit just because it gets a little bit depressing. I mean, it's great, but it's that kind of a story. So I'll definitely get back to it because I freaking love where it's going, and it's weird and super quirky and just exactly what I wanted. But you got to be in the right headspace for it. But I did play a really cute and cozy game called The Last Campfire. I don't know if you've seen this before. It's made
Yeah,
by
I've heard of it.
yeah, Hello Games, the people that did No Man's Sky. Loved this one. It took me about 12, 13 hours or so. Um, just a really wholesome game. It was just one of those wholesome experiences that I don't know, you don't have them too often, but a lot of these smaller games often offer those. So it's very much a puzzle game for anyone interested. There is a story. You're basically this little lost ember that's trying to sort of find its way through this world to move on and help all these other embers move on. And there's a whole bunch of like little puzzles where you've got to move blocks and things to get around the world and yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyway, I loved it. Highly recommend that one. Um, and the two big games that I'm currently playing are Persona 5 Royal, so I've resumed playing that one.
You've gone back to it.
Yeah, I've probably put in over 100 hours collectively on this game already, and it's about a 100 something hour game. But I stopped playing and then started playing again when Royal came out. Um, that was a stupid decision, but whatever. We're here now. I love this game. I just haven't finished it and haven't had the time to commit to it. So anyway, I'm in it. It's
Mhm.
so good. So I'll probably that's probably going to be my game that I prioritize. And then I started, this one's kind of relevant to the topic today. I started playing a game called 2064 Read Only Memories. It's a visual novel, so it's not very gamey. It's more story. But it was released in 2015. It's on every platform, I think. And I have a physical copy. I forgot to grab it actually, but it's a a really retro inspired visual novel, very cyberpunk themed. Um, and it's all pixel art. It looks and sounds the soundtrack for this game incredible. One of my favorite soundtracks ever for a game. Um, I wanted to mention it though because it is a little bit of a problematic game as as we find that they always are, right? Um, Long story short, the CEO and uh, the founder of the game development studio, Midboss, was found to have I think he was charged with sexual misconduct and a bunch of other things, which is a big damn shame because this game is very pro queer normative narratives. And this guy, what's his name? Matt, someone I think. Let me see. I don't think I wrote it down. Anyway, this guy, the founder and CEO, he also founded Gamer X, which is like a queer gaming convention. So he's like, really seemed to have been doing a lot of stuff for the queer community and bringing people in for inclusiveness and things like that. But anyway, it's just kind of a shame because when you find something that you love, it's always going to be these days, it seems, a story about how it all kind of goes to shit.
And you're like, you just wait, like you wait for it. You're like, can I enjoy anything
little bit.
anymore, or do I need to wait to see if this person's a shithead or not?
Yeah, pretty much. So it's a big shame. I knew about this before I started playing it, not before I bought it, and I've made a decision to play it anyway because it is, I think there's more good than bad in it because there's a lot of queer references, queer characters. It's actually very very queer game. But it's super cool as well, the game. But I just wanted to mention it because if you're picking it up and playing it, you should know about it before you do. But yeah, it's a cool little cyberpunk story-based game. Loving that. So I'll talk about that more when I finished it. Yeah, I think that's all. So just gaming for me. Yeah,
That's right. We
fun.
cycle through the hobbies.
Indeed.
Yeah, I've definitely been gaming more the last fortnight as well. I blame Fantasy Life for getting me back into the. I
Sorry.
well, it's nice though because I have a
It's good though.
Switch. I got gifted a
Mhm.
Switch for Christmas last year, and I just haven't been using it.
Yeah.
So now that I'm using it essentially every day, it's like, oh, I'm getting my value out of the the platform again, which is nice. Still not enough to justify going and buying a ROG, which is what I would like.
Ah,
But yeah, um, cool. All right. Well, you're talking about queer normative worlds, which is probably a good place to start because I definitely have queer normative worlds in books that I can talk about. So if you have queer normative world games or books, we can start there for
sure.
our
Can I
episode.
just? I'm gonna cheat right up
Okay.
from the
Well,
very beginning. Can I, if you'll let me?
I'm glad that you're being open and honest about that.
So after last episode, I realized there was two very
Oh,
important TV show characters that I forgot to mention that I need to mention. And technically, the first one that I'll mention, there is a game that has this character in it. So technically, it is a game, and I can include it in this list. I haven't played this game, so I don't know if it's apparently not very good. But I need to mention these two characters because they're very important. So the first one is Korra from The Legend of Korra, the TV animated series.
do you remember the
Um,
uproar about that when Cora came out as
yes,
a lesbian? Like it,
yes.
there was like, oh, spoilers. but
Well,
but
yeah, I was
but
just
you're
gonna say. So
but you're
spoiler
watching this
alert.
episode, so it's a
Yeah,
queer episode.
it,
Um,
it came out in 2012 to 2014. By the way, that blew my mind when I looked this up because I'm like, that's a long time ago. So spoilers, and it's been a while. So too bad.
I remember, I don't know how old I was. I was in uni, and people were like, oh, I can't believe that this is a thing. And I was like, hey, I'm young and queer. Like, we enjoy
Yeah.
representation.
Yep.
But yeah, I remember there was an uproar about it. I've never watched it, but I remember.
Yeah. So that's the thing about it, right? So spoiler warning, just in case you want to watch it and you haven't yet. So that the final scene with Korra and Asami, basically that just it changed the playing field for like because this is technically a
Mm.
children's show, I guess, teenagers show. So it changed it forever. And I just want to read something from Wikipedia because I think this was just like the coolest thing to remember. And I just happened upon it again after not thinking about it for so long. So summing up book 4, this is directly from Wikipedia, I quote, Joanna Robinson for Vanity Fair described it as the most subversive television event of the year, noting how much of the season and series pushed the boundaries of what is nominally children's television by breaking racial, sexual, and political ground. Moreover, according to Robinson, the series' final scene, in which Korra and Asami gaze into each other's eyes in a shot mirroring the composition of Avatar's final moment, in which Aang and Katara kiss, changed the face of TV by going further than any other works of children's television in depicting same-sex relationships. An assessment shared by a bunch of, I'm paraphrasing now, a bunch of other big-time reviewers as well. So it was kind of a big deal at the time. And I remember watching that scene and I'm just like mind blown. I was like, kids TV, what is going on? This is great, you know. But I think it changed a lot of things. It's important. Yeah.
But
So I wanted to mention
it's
that one. I know
important
we're
to
not
show
talking
it
about that
on.
anymore, but
Like, it's important to show that on kids TV, and not graphic, obviously,
absolutely.
but like
No, nothing even happened, but it
we're
was,
just people.
yeah.
Like, and I think kids are so much more. Like, their understanding is way more than we give them credit for, and they're like, "Oh, okay, whatever. That doesn't affect my life in any way, shape, or form. So I'm just going to continue being a child." And they can carry on. So, like, I love that it was all the parents being like, "This is an outrage,"
Oh.
and the kids are like, "All right, what's next?
What's the big
What's
deal?
the next show? Okay, I'm going outside to
Yeah.
play now. No one cares."
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah, I agree. But it was cool to remember that because it's been a while since I even thought about that show. But it's one of my favorites. It's so good. And the other character I do want to mention, there's no game, at least not that I'm aware of. There might be, I don't know.
someone
Maybe
make
there's
a
book
game
that-
so it ties into this episode. Quick.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, there are books, I'm sure. So though I guess technically it's part of the list here. But Jack Harkness and Yanto
yes.
Jones as well from Torchwood, and what's it called? Doctor Who as well, of which I'm not a big fan of Doctor Who, but Torchwood absolutely. And I just wanted to mention Jack Harkness as well, because obviously Jack Harkness is played by actor John Barrowman, who is an openly gay and an absolute legend actor. And again, from Wikipedia, I just want to quickly mention, so this is quoted, Jack was the first openly non-heterosexual character in the history of televised Doctor Who. The popularity of the character amongst multiple audiences directly influenced the development of the spin-off series Torchwood, and the character became a figure of British public consciousness, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So it's, massive, big deal, and still is.
When was Torchwood released? Was that around 2010 as well?
It would have been, I think,
so
yeah.
we were getting a lot more media around the
Yeah.
2010s and visibility.
Yeah.
It's a shame that now, the world hates us again. So we're going
That's why
backwards.
it's important again, right?
But yeah, we did have a good decade.
Indeed. It'll come back around.
It'll come back again, yeah.
So look, I wanted to mention those two again because they're important. So do you want to kick us off with the worlds? You mentioned with I guess normalizing queer worlds. Yeah, and we'll go from there.
Look, there are quite a few. I've only got a select couple behind me, and most of mine are books. I was talking to Ryan a little bit prior to filming this. The games that I played did have choice where you could choose to be somewhere on the rainbow, but I didn't necessarily have games where the character was queer. You made that decision. But I do really enjoy queer normative worlds. It's probably what I appreciate the most now as an old gay. Like, I'm turning 34 in a couple of months. But I've been in the rainbow for a long time, and just where you just treat people as people, they just happen to like certain things. Or the two that I'm going to mention, one I have behind me, which is the Rook and Rose series, starting with Mask and Mirrors. I've read the first two. I've still got the third one to go. This is a very queer normative world where people are just attracted to other people. There isn't a mention of sexuality. It's not they're gay, they're bi, they're lesbian. It doesn't matter. People are just attracted to other people, whether they be the same sex or other sexes. The character that I want to showcase in the series, who is more, I guess, prevalent in the second book, called The Lies Not, is Vargo. And I don't want to really give spoilers away, but he's set up to be a certain type of character, and he really comes into his own a lot more in the second book, and he has relationships with both men and women throughout the two books that I've read, but there isn't a question of it, and the whole world is like that. There are several other side characters who have more affinity to one other than the other, one gender over another. I want to say there is non-binary rep in this series, if I'm remembering it correctly, or just people who don't really go by a gender, and there's no questions again about it. But it's really refreshing to see worlds like this where it's not a talking point, it just is, like people just are. And the other one that I would like to mention, sorry, do you have one that you want to throw over to?
No,
Go
go
back and
for it.
forth.
Go for it. You're on a roll. No, no, no.
The other one that I will mention is, I don't have a physical copy of it because I've been doing them on audio, is the Tainted Dominion series by Kay Matar, who, this world, like, everyone is bi, I think. Like just everyone. There is no question about it.
Interesting.
There are gay relationships, there are straight relationships, but everyone has sort of been with everyone, like, at some point, and there's no question of it. It's a very sexually charged series, even though that's not at the forefront of the story. Like, it's a very plot heavy world and a very world building heavy world, but because it's character driven, people just are sexual beings, and then they do gravitate towards any other person. But there's two characters, both bisexual men, and as someone who identifies as a bisexual man, it's interesting to see more and more of this representation come out. But the two that I want to mention are Ishmael, who is an older gentleman, I would say middling age, between 40 and 50, who doesn't give a fuck. He will sleep with anyone and anything because he doesn't want to feel anything, but he's attracted to both. He has relationships with both. It was interesting in this particular world as well, of the idea of sex between friends and not being a romantic attraction, but purely being a sexual attraction, but still being able to carry on a friendship, which is not
Hmm.
something I've seen a lot in fiction because it's romanticized. Like, sex is often romanticized. But
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I'm bored. And like, that happens in real life,
Yeah.
throughout
Sure.
people's
Yeah.
lives. I mean, we're married like now,
Yeah.
so,
Sure.
but I'm sure it happens to others in their lives. And my personal favorite character in this whole series is a young man by the name of Lorne, who is gay, and he is so in love with his person. And it's a really violent and pure longing and yearning for this one particular person. That changes a little bit as the series goes on. But he's so damaged, and I'm very, very drawn to this character. Like, I just want to hug him. Like, this boy just needs some love. But it's one of those worlds where, again, not questioned, not really talked about. It's just you happen to love or are attracted to that person, not that gender, which
Hmm.
I really appreciate in books nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. Normalizing that, like, I think that's, that's kind of where we want to get to, right? Like, it's not a thing anymore. You have to think about. It's interesting you said about, though, that like basically everyone's bisexual in this world, because there's something I want to return to when I talk about some particular games in a little bit. You just pinged something in my brain, which is an interesting choice, and it's kind of interesting to unpack that a little bit. Like, is that a utopian society? Would that be considered a utopian society in that case, where like that's not thought about, or is there some kind of erasure happening there? Where everyone just kind of is attracted to anyone else. It's kind of an interesting concept to unpack a little bit, but yeah, no, it sounds like it's yeah, normalizing it, like
And
you
I
said.
wonder, the author is wildly bisexual as well. So
Sure,
I was
it
like,
helps.
I wonder if that's there has been too much erasure, because I feel like there is very much a stigma around bisexuality or
Yes.
pansexuality. They are different, but in terms of being attracted to multiple genders, or just not worrying about gender at all in terms of pansexuality, um, and whether it's like, no, I've had enough of bi erasure,
Yeah.
therefore everyone is now.
Everyone.
Every
Yeah.
everyone is.
I like that. I dig that. That's
But
good.
I mean, we can move on to games because I feel like Bioware's done this a lot, like where the choice is there.
Yeah, right. So let's unpack that a little bit then, and relate it to what you were talking about. So when we talk about queer characters in games, BioWare is up here, right? Like, but everyone else is like, they're all doing a little bit of visibility here. There's a few characters there, but BioWare's just like up here, the kings of kings and queens and
And they
and
them's.
thems, yeah, of queer characters in video games. And I did a little bit of research just to make sure my memory of all of this was still correct, because this is something that I'm like really into, of course, because I love BioWare, although they're a little bit of they're in dire straits at the moment. But basically, since their first game where they had a queer character that you could play as well as a queer character in a video game, just in general, of one of their games, was Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. So you could play as a female Revan, was the name of the character. They've since canonized the male Revan, which is interesting, that they've picked a gender and then they've gone with that. That's the canon version of Revan. But whatevs, that happens. But you can play. I know I was a little sad to read that when they made that choice many years ago now. But you can create a female Revan, and you can romance a character named Juhani, who is a female character in this game. And interestingly, and this is a choice that they've made, where if you play as a male Revan, Juhani is not romanceable. So she is a lesbian character. She's not like accessible to either gender. You can only pick male and female in this game. There wouldn't be non-binary choices for player characters in a BioWare game until their very recent one, which is Veilguard, which is crazy to think about.
Which I want to return to when we talk about non-binary characters, because there was uproar about that as well. Anyway, carry on.
Yes,
apologies.
Absolutely, there's a lot. But anyway, so they've made this decision. They put it in this game, and interestingly, we would see this trend sort of continue in the other games as well. So when Mass Effect came out, and this was in 2007, again there was no gay male romance option for Commander Shepard, but there was for a female Commander Shepard. Again, we would have choices. There was Liara Tassoni was a choice to romance that particular character, and we'll come back to the characters in a minute. But it's interesting that they've repeated the same, and I would call them mistakes, not having that player choice. Again, from years later. But anyway, so BioWare, so their first game, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, they've done a whole bunch since. So obviously the Mass Effect, I do have props. The Mass Effect and Dragon Age games. And Mass Effect, I've got the, what is this one called? The Legendary Edition with all 3 games. Highly recommended, by the way. If you're a gamer and you have not played these games, play them. Drop everything. Stop listening to this podcast. Go play the games. They're amazing.
I tried, and I gave up.
Yeah, you hurt my heart a little bit.
Sorry, I've read Neuromancer. What more do you want from me?
That's true. Beggars can't be choosers here, right? And then Inquisition, Dragon Age Inquisition is my favorite of all the Dragon Age games, but there are many of them. But anyway, so these are notorious for having these massive worlds, or universes, if you like, in case of Mass Effect, that have a whole bunch of queer characters populated within them. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a rapid fire of these. I'm not going to go into too much because there's too many. So I'm not going to mention all of them. I'm just going to mention my favorites and why they're important to me. Because literally there's a big long list that, if you look up BioWare, LGBTQIA plus characters, there's a lot. And they're not all equally represented, by the way. So there are still problems. They're not perfect. But I think, compared to any other game developer in existence, I think, you can't beat what they are doing, the waves that they were making. So my favorites from Mass Effect, the entire series. So there's Liara Tassoni from Mass Effect 1. Now, she is one of your female squad mates in Mass Effect, but technically she's not female. She's Asari. So Asari, they don't have a gender. So they're technically genderless. And they can procreate with anyone of any gender and any race. So technically she's not a woman or a lesbian, but she's still a feminine presenting character. And I think that was nice to see in the game anyway. So, but she does come with an asterisk. There is Steve Cortez from Mass Effect 3. He's the gay character love interest for male Shep. So this is when they actually decided to go, you know what, we need to put characters that are specifically, have a sexuality.
Yeah, because gay men aren't scary. But I feel like they were viewed as really scary and taboo, because if you wanted to get a cis white male audience, or just a cis male audience,
yep,
you couldn't have gay men in there because they were terrifying, but you could have lesbians because that wasn't
Yep,
scary.
lesbians were fine, and bi characters, oh, yeah, it's fine. We just satisfy everybody. Yeah, but for some reason, yeah, it's just they wouldn't do it. It would take them many years before they would do it. So this is 2012 when they finally changed their tune a little bit. Um, and by the way, they kind of did a little bit of backtracking and made one of the characters who was in Mass Effect 1 available to be
Mm.
romanced by a gay Commander Shepard. So, like problematic, but hey, at least they kind of realized. Um, but the reason I'm putting Steve Cortez on this list is because it was the first time I'd heard a male character refer to their husband in like just a side conversation. It wasn't like a conversation you had to have in the game. It wasn't super important to the game, although I kind of think it was. But like you could have just not had that conversation at all. But it was cool, just normalize. Oh, he's talking about his husband, and that was great. So that was back in 2012. There's Samantha Trainer from Mass Effect 3. And she was a potential romance option for female Commander Shepard. One of my favorite characters. She's hilarious. She has a whole thing about her toothbrush. I'll just leave it at that. I'll just leave that there. She's a great character though. They knocked it out of the park with the writing for her. And then Arya Talok from Mass Effect 2, again another Asari, voiced by Carrie-Anne Moss. Not a romanceable character, but there's this scene for either gender of Commander Shepard that is absolutely pure gold. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's just cool to see these tiny little moments that really, they didn't have to include those. They really didn't make any difference to the story, but they were important enough to the BioWare team at the time and all of the fans of the games that they included them. And it's just nice to have them so many years later and still, recognize that they were really making a bit of a difference by including these things. I'll pause there because I can go on with Dragon Age, but I just wanted to mention, so these ones are probably the ones most meaningful to me, just because it was like the first time I saw a particular character in a game that said something, or that was kind of eye opening at that time. Because again, this is going back a while, so.
I mean, let's talk about Dragon Age, because I feel like it's important to talk about what happened with that non-binary character and the reception that it got. We talk about queer males being scary, or not marketable to a male audience, and
That's true.
the most recent Dragon Age copped so much flack once it released because of how inclusive it was. And that non-binary storyline was like beautiful. Like, it was really lovely.
Yeah.
They did a lovely job with it. And we live in a world now where people are acknowledging that, non-binary people exist, or agender people exist, and they don't necessarily go by gendered pronouns. But I just remember the anti-woke mob from Dragon Age. I can't remember. I don't know. Valgard? Is that the
Belgard,
latest one?
yeah.
Yeah. Like in full force, because I've since unfollowed quite a few of them because for safety.
Yeah.
But like, I just remember just the disgusting conversations that were happening about it. Like, these people exist, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. They exist.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that we do have non-binary characters for people of who are learning that is an option
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
So
I think that's the important thing to mention, right? So, because this is still ongoing, there's actually been a bit of a development with BioWare and what happened with Veilguard in particular, by Jason Schreier from Bloomberg. He's put out an article very recently. I'll link it in the show notes. Talking about what happened to BioWare and what happened with Veilguard in particular, and the mass exodus of all of the developers from BioWare. So it's still ongoing, but I think the important thing to mention with the character you're referring to is Tash, and they were a character on a gender journey in the story, like throughout your playtime as the player character in the game.
they
They
come
are
out,
going on their
right?
own journey. Yeah,
Yeah.
they come out to their mother in the game. There's a whole character arc. I won't spoil it. It's well, it's already out
Outside
there.
of
Everyone
that.
knows. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like to spoil things just in general, but there is a whole character arc, and originally she goes by she her pronouns, and then um, uses they them over the course of the game. And there's this lovely little sort of coming out and acceptance
Mhm.
and discovery kind of arc that happens with this character. That I felt, look, as a non-binary person, and I've spoken to I spoke to Rachel, your
Mm.
wife, about this. Actually, we had a proper conversation because she's also a big fan of Dragon Age, and I felt that was a really honest, genuine, impactful representation of a non-binary character in a video game in a way that I hadn't seen before. And a lot of people felt like Tash as a character was very whiny, very came across as like a whiny teenager, basically. Um, but the thing to note with that is that like they're a flawed character, as we are all flawed human beings. And they are young. Like that was like the whole point. Like they're on this discovery journey at finding out who they are. That's a massive deal, and it just kind of goes to show. And to me, it was a bit eye opening to see so many people just really can't grasp that, and will never be able to grasp that unless they've been through it themselves. So I felt it was absolutely spot on. Obviously, the team, the writers, a lot of them are queer themselves.
Mm.
They've probably non-binary people as well, so they know this is from first-hand experience. This is from consulting with the actual queer folks themselves, and they've put that in the game. And there's a lot of heart. So problematic game aside, Tash as a character, I thought they were fantastic.
I think it's important to note there as well. You touched upon it with they had non-binary people very likely in development teams. It's quite a true representation of what happens during a gender journey. It does not matter how old you are going to fall back into pre-adult thought patterns because your brain can't cope with what's going on. Like I remember starting hormones in my late 20s, and I was a teenager again even prior to hormones, like I could not regulate my emotions because you can't. Like
Yeah,
you
you
don't you
can't.
don't have enough brain space to do that. I was ridiculous for probably 2 to 3 years, and I know it was ridiculous, and I still could not stop it from happening. As a personal note, and I'm sure you went through the same thing where you're like, I know I'm being ridiculous, and I shouldn't be having these thoughts and these feelings as an adult, but I cannot stop it. So
Yeah, you
regardless of
can't
what
help it.
age Tash is or was during that journey, you will revert because there's
Hmm.
too much. There's too much happening in the brain.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, it's
yeah.
interesting. Look, one of my favorite characters of all time, queer LGBTQIA plus characters, is a non-binary character, and I speak about Alarin all the time.
Mm.
But there was a scene from this book. So this is the third book of the Tide Trail trilogy. So spoilers, because I'm going to go into that scene a little bit. Not too much in that it gives away any of the story, but this particular scene, this particular character arc. So Alarin is in it from the first book. Alarin is they always go by they them pronouns, but it's never assumed what gender this person is. They just don't know, so they go by they them pronouns. And Alarin hides a lot. They are the cartographer of this particular ship of the dead, so they map out the courses of what they're doing. And our main character, Joran, eventually gets to talk to Alarin, and they, outside of just where are we going next, what's the safe course for us. And by this book, they have such a beautiful scene together where Alarin comes out essentially, and tells us their backstory. And it's never spoken about, but it's alluded to what gender they were prior to going by they them pronouns. And that scene is just one that I remember seeing very visually in my head as Joran grows as a person over the trilogy. And I will say that if you're looking for character growth in any series, this is probably still the series that I recommend. From book one to book three, they're completely different characters, and they've grown so much together as a group. But yeah, just this scene of him sitting down and being like, I want to understand. I don't understand. I'm being honest about that. Help me. And this person then trusting him enough to do that. It was such a beautiful and powerful scene, and like that character will forever stay in my mind because of it. So I think it's very important that we hear those stories.
Yeah.
because it's something that I don't
Yeah.
understand. And through my interactions with you and even fiction, I've been able to empathize with non-binary folk. And now I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll defend any of them.
Yeah. Right. But I think that's an important point to make though. Like it's an experience that a lot of people don't understand, can't understand. It's not their own experience. So that makes it even more important to read about it and to have, those stories being told. And when someone comes along, as was the case with, many people come along, as was the case with Dragon Age, right? It's like, someone just shitting all over someone else's experience. That was, I felt, like you just said,
Mm.
for that book as well, like such a beautiful moment or a scene or a story being told that was really important. It kind of hurts a little bit to, especially for non-binary representation, because there's so little of it still compared or comparatively to everything else. So yeah, that sounds great. That sounds like a really beautiful scene,
It was
and
yeah, it's still one of my favorite
yeah,
scenes that I've ever read, and like that series has a couple of those really deep,
yeah,
impactful scenes. R.J. Barker as an author is, I would say, gender non-conforming, um,
hmm
very taxidermy, very like 80s rocker makeup and long
nice,
hair and
very stylish.
steampunky esque.
It's good.
But in all of the series that I've read, so I've read two, I've got the third series of is to read. There's always a character that plays with gender, and I expect that to be in the series that I haven't read as well. So interesting. I think maybe pulling on his own experience as well as being
hmm
someone who doesn't necessarily fit into a box of
Yeah,
masculinity. So yeah, it's just interesting and very very important.
yeah, absolutely. Speaking of fitting into boxes, Um, I wanted to go back to something you mentioned before about the other book you referred to where everyone is bisexual, and just relate that to one of the Dragon Age games actually. Um, so as we know with a lot of games, like the player character you can choose often gender, and with a lot of the romance options in many video games, they are often set to be, this character is, attracted to this gender. Like this is a lesbian character, this is a gay character, this is a bisexual character. So BioWare did something really interesting. It was a choice that they made with Dragon Age 2, where they basically did just make everybody bisexual. Um, which on the surface seems like a good thing because you can choose, like you're not excluded. I think they look the best intentions. They wanted to make sure everyone felt they had a choice. But I think the flip side of that and the backlash that they got was, well, now these characters you've like erased their sexuality. They, if everyone's bisexual, like what,
What about
there's no
straight
one
pride?
actually. Yeah, yeah, had to do it, didn't
Yeah.
you? Oh, yeah. So it's interesting, like the choices you make, and I'm sure, look, Bioware have been through the ringer with it because they're just trying to do the right thing. They're just trying to cater to their audience, who are many queer folks. But yeah, but by making that choice, you've kind of chosen against another choice, right? And kind of erased an identity for these characters and also for the player in a sense. So I just found that was an interesting tidbit to share because, like, I feel like you can't really, no matter what you choose as a writer or a game
Oh, you're
developer,
always
whatever,
going to piss someone off.
you're gonna piss
Yeah,
someone
it
off.
doesn't
A lot
look.
of
It
people.
doesn't matter what you do. You're going to
Yeah.
piss somebody off. There's a
Yeah.
a non-binary character in my book, and I'm sure I'm going to cop it for it. They're not introduced until right till like the end because they're a bigger part in like book two. But there is a conversation about, do I have to pick or can I just
Mm.
like be a human being? You're all turning into fucking animals over here, and I'm the problem. Like,
Nice.
um, which is just a throwaway to some of the conversations that we have had in our real life.
Mhm.
Um, but it's
Yeah.
interesting, and I guess trying to tie in games. And I know I talk about The Sims a lot, but the latest Sims 4, I haven't played it in a very long time, and I bought not the expansion that's about to come out, but the most recent expansion for businesses and stuff. And I was playing around with building things and getting bored and turning it off. But something that they have done in The Sims 4 is, one, you can have like top surgery scars and things like that. The character
Yeah.
creation is very friendly to all walks of the rainbow, but they've introduced asexuality, which I thought was very interesting.
Oh,
And
interesting. I didn't know
again,
that.
it's another experience that I don't have personally. And I've just picked a couple of books out that have asexuality in it.
Yeah.
But I remember like romancing someone because it's romantic attraction, but not sexual attraction.
Mhm.
And like, I was like, okay, I'm gonna marry this person, and they're like, oh, I don't have sex. I don't do that. But it's a preset. And I was like, wait, did they add asexuality into this game? And they
Yeah.
did. Like, that's really interesting. So you can date, you can have romantic attraction, but there is a preset to say, I will not cross that line. And I was like, I've never seen it in a video game before,
No,
never seen it
never.
represented. That was really cool for asexual people because you can play it without, you know,
Sure. Yeah.
romancing it, but actually having characters and NPCs who are like,
Yep.
not my thing, and you can
That's
make your
cool.
own character, like saying
Mhm.
so it they're basically boundaries, so they've added boundaries into the game, so with sexuality.
Wow.
And yeah, and I was like, it's very progressive for, and I mean they have to be, right? It's a game that
Yeah.
lets people live out their lives and their fantasies.
Yeah.
um but something that I'm very grateful for, and again, it's a book I've flogged to death on my own channel, is, and it was sent to me by the author, which is this one, Legacy of the Vermilion Blade by J. Tolsquare. Beautiful writing, very poetic. If you like purple prose, then it's absolutely stunning. Um, Asexual character, zero sexual attraction, hasn't had sex in their life. Romantic attraction, sure, but just very little interest in going more. And I learnt so much about his name's Talon Corvermain, probably butchered that pronunciation. Um, and I thanked the author after reading it. I was like, this is not an experience that I've had. There have been asexual people in my life that I didn't feel comfortable talking about because I didn't want to trigger them in any way, shape, or form. I was like, you taught me something. And then since then, I have seen it a couple of times in books. And look, it's a spectrum, right? So not every asexual person doesn't feel any sort of, doesn't have the inclination to have sex, because I've since read one recently, and I spoke about it in a previous episode that I sensitivity read, where they are sexual, but it's not a desire for them. It's just the person that they're with and the trust in that. And this series here, Gardens of War and Wasteland, the main character Amica also just starts out with like a romantic interest and realizes that she's really just not interested at all in the second book, and we have that growth, which is quite interesting. And again, another experience that I've been able to have, well, not have because it's not mine, but learn about through
Yeah.
fictional settings.
That's interesting in particular because that, again, that's that character going on that journey in the course of the story rather
Mm.
than being already fully figured out when you get to know them. And I think those kinds of stories are very important because that's life. That's how it
Yeah,
happens.
like in the case of that Legacy of the Vermilion Blade, we start with this character as a young man, and we follow him through his life, and he's like, something wrong with me? Like, I don't get it. And we see him in various ages where he's had attraction to people that have just been like friendship, like these beautiful friendships,
Yeah.
and even romantic attraction to some extent, but just yeah, not crossing that line. So it's interesting, and I think a real throw to what literature or fiction, I guess, as a whole can teach us.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I do want to mention a specific character, or really, let me shout out two of the Dragon Age characters. Just you reminded me something to mention here. Before I move on from Bioware, Bioware takes up like all of my like gaming mostly, but I do have some others beyond. But I do want to shout out a couple of characters on the list here. One of them being a character named Cremisius Aclassi, of which my cat is
Where is
named after
Creme?
this character.
We're speaking about
Yeah,
Creme. Yeah.
yeah. My cat is literally named after this character, and I'll tell you a funny story in a minute. But so Krem is a trans man character in Dragon Age Inquisition, voiced by Jennifer Hale, who does the voice for female Commander Shepard. Now, ordinarily, as is talked about a lot in the queer spheres, having a cis het person voice a trans or queer character is often slightly problematic. In this case, knowing how much Jennifer Hale does for the queer community and how amazing she is as a person, no issue. And she knocked it out of the park with this character. So, just know that. But this was a moment for me because, again, this game came out in 2012. And seeing this character of Krem in this game who tells you a little bit about his story. I won't spoil it again. It's worth seeing on your own, but he's like a freaking badass of a character. Like he is, and in this world, there's not really there is like magic, but there's no way necessarily, or maybe he has chosen, I actually don't know, to change yourself. So there's no like concept of taking hormones or anything. That's not a thing. At least it's not discussed. So, he's wearing like full armor and he uses he, him pronouns, and he talks a little bit about his experiences, and they're just so like specifically trans experiences. Like I saw myself in this character way back in 2012 before I knew anything about it. And I feel like now, thinking about this now in hindsight, I think that was a little bit of an egg cracked moment, to be honest. And I didn't think about it. I haven't thought about this for a long time. And he's just like this side character as well. It's not like you don't even need to necessarily talk to him, I don't think. But it was interesting to happen upon this character. I didn't know he was in the game before I played it. And he's just sharing these personal experiences, just talking a little bit, just casually in conversation with you as the player character. Talking about like, he liked to pretend to shave with his dad and things like that. And I'm just like, that's so adorable. Like they didn't have to include that. There's just no reason they had to do it. And yet this game is also one of the, if not one of, I think the most successful Dragon Age games. So a lot of people experience this conversation with this character. There was no uproar over that, at least not that I know of, like there was with Tash and these other characters. But yeah, I just thought that was a nice thing to mention. There was a trans male character in this game back in 2012. I think it was 2012. Yeah, and he's great. He's written really well and voiced really well.
I think this is, I mean, I've always spoken about it at length, but this is why it's important to have representation, because I wouldn't have had the language for it. I mean, I was very lucky that people had transitioned in my life, and even though I didn't clock, without hearing it from multiple different avenues, I would have been like, I'm fine as a lesbian. I'm just miserable all the time, and I don't understand why.
I just hate the world.
I just literally hate who I am, but I don't know why. It's interesting about the magic being a part of it, because there's a book, which is Malmo Romantasy, which is the only romantasy I really gravitate towards, written by a trans man, Fos Meadows. It's called A Strange and Stubborn Endurance, and in this book there is alluded to a trans character who, it's not really a question. They just go, he used to be female, but he had the ability to change with his magic, and he's just like, so why wouldn't I? If I wasn't feeling right, I had the ability. And like, can you imagine how easy it would be?
Yeah.
Like, how much easier would our lives have been if we were like, you know what? I actually don't want to be X, and I choose to be Y.
It's a great thought experiment as well when you're trying to figure yourself 100%. Out, because you can ask yourself, if you did have that option, would you do that? That's a great way to frame it.
That's so I panicked quite a lot. I think a lot of adults do if they figure it out later in life. And I was like, am I making the biggest mistake in my life? Like, what am I doing? And I took to Reddit back in those days when Reddit was a thing. I mean, it's still a thing for the millennials. Yeah, for us. Yeah. And that was something that, advice that an older trans male gave to me was, if you could wake up tomorrow and be what gender, what would it be? And I was like, right.
Ding.
Right.
Now I understand.
Yeah, got it.
It clarifies it in a way that no other question really can. So
yeah, like this character's in the book as a side character. I can't even remember his name. He was a past lover of one of the main characters in this very prestigious castle thing. Prestigious? I don't know what word I just said. And yeah, it's just like it was a throwaway. It was like a comment. It was like a sentence, and my brain was like, "Oh, I saw that." And it was interesting because it's trans male author as well. Fos Meadows is quite open about his transition. It's like, I see you. I see what you did there.
Yeah, it's so important. It's so important. Speaking of having queer, and actually, by the way, something I wanted to mention up front, we are using queer in the sense of collectively LGBTQIA+. Not everyone uses that word that way. We do. That's just our language. So that's, how we're choosing to use it. So just FYI, in case that comes up. But there is a character named Dorian. So this is the last Dragon Age character that I'll mention, BioWare in general. his name's Dorian. He's a gay male character. He is written by the legendary David Gator, who is the one of the best writers BioWare has ever had. And just on that note, like when you have queer writers actually writing these queer characters, that makes the world of difference because you can see these personal stories. Dorian's story arc, I won't spoil it again. It's amazing. It's about family, about being ostracized, about having to leave your home and build a life and separate yourself from family and all of that. In this fantasy world, but it's so you can relate to it. It's so relatable because it's something that a lot of people just have to deal with. But because it was written by a gay man author, writer, it is what it is. It's a precious story to have been told in a video game, and yeah, it needs to be that way. Like it has to be personal for us to relate and understand. And yeah, you need to have these queer writers writing these characters and voicing these characters and acting and being a part of that creative process.
It's part of the reason that I appreciate Elliot Fletcher and what he did in his early career so much. Is
Yeah.
They're not necessarily comfortable stories to tell and to share, but very important for somebody else. Doesn't matter what age. There's no age to coming out. Finding it. Now we are at 55 minutes, so
Yes.
Do you want to mention somebody else other than BioWare?
I can do a rapid fire.
Okay.
I can do. Sorry, hang on. I have props. One sec. Okay, I knew it would come to this. It's okay. I'm prepared. So I'm going to do a rapid fire of just like
get the disc jockey voice out.
5, 6, 7. Yeah, I've got 7. We can do this.
Go.
Okay.
No, we don't have to rush it. You're fine.
So number 1, Jimmy Hopkins from the game Bully, one of Rockstar's earliest games. I don't have a prop for this one, but I wanted to mention it because there is an achievement in the game where if you kiss 20 boys and you're playing as Jimmy, this character, he's a male character, you get an achievement for kissing 20 boys in the game. And to have that back in 2006 was kind of amazing. So that was kind of cool. Just a complete throwaway thing, but they included it in there, and that was great. There's Ellie from The Last of Us. She's having the whole show and the game and everything's kind of back in popular culture at the moment, so I don't need to say more about that, but I haven't watched the show. There is that scene. I'm looking forward to that scene. Max and Chloe from the OG Life is Strange. So this one here, one of my favorite games ever. Chloe as a character, she's the badass lesbian character that we all kind of want to be friends with, that character. And she's great, and her relationship with Max is fantastic. I won't say more than that. It's just a fantastic story, and I'm still heartbroken. There's Tyler.
I love this so much. It really hurt.
Yeah. Well, they're the most memorable ones, right? One of my favorite game series. All of the characters, all of the games have queer characters in them. There's actually 4 or 5 of them now. There's quite a lot. There is Tyler from Tell Me Why. I don't know why I didn't grab that game, but he's also a trans man character. Pretty rare. You don't get to see them that often, so it was nice to see him featured as like the protagonist in the story. That's also a game by Don't Nod, by the way, the same people that did Life is Strange. There is a trans woman character in Cyberpunk. Her name is Claire Russell. Despite all of the crap that happened with Cyberpunk originally, and some of it very questionable, she is written very well and I think handled quite nicely. And so, yeah, I do think that should be mentioned. And lastly, I want to mention Baldur's Gate 3 because I haven't finished it. I know there's a bunch of queer characters in that game. People will, if they're listening to this or watching this later, will probably tell me, what about all the queer characters in Baldur's Gate 3? So I haven't finished it yet. I will. I plan to. I just.
It's very fantasy for you.
Yes.
Yeah, for your taste.
Yeah,
but
it's important, but yeah, I need to be in the right headspace for that one.
Back to things that annoy Chris. So, like, talking about non-binary people, in sci-fi, often, like, beings and entities are not gendered, or, like, aliens aren't gendered, but people can get their head around that. Yeah, they can't get their head around, like, and they use they, them pronouns all the time.
Yep.
Like, okay, so why? Anyway, sidebar.
Yeah.
It
Same with
grinds my
pets when you
gears.
don't know
Yeah,
the gender of a
yeah.
pet, and it's just like, what gender are they, or is it a boy or a girl? But
I
yeah,
don't know. I haven't asked them. Do they know? I don't
yeah,
know. We're presuming.
exactly.
uh,
Just presume my gender.
yeah. How dare you?
Yeah,
I don't care anymore. Call
um,
me what you want. um, do you have any books that you wanted to mention? Because you do have a couple behind you. You
I do.
got some
Yeah,
Beaker
I do have a
Chambers,
few.
yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Worth mentioning.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the first one I wanted to mention because again, a non-binary uh, character in the game. So this is the monk and robot duology right now. There might be more, who knows, at some point. A Psalm for the Wild Built and a Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers, who is also non binary, I believe, uses they them pronouns. Um, Dex is a monk who serves tea and uses they them pronouns and has a relationship with a robot called Moscap, who is also genderless and uses its pronouns. But it's all completely normal in the story. Like, it's not a thing. It's not really even mentioned. You don't go into it. It's just accepted, and I loved it for that. It was just part of the world, and it didn't matter to anyone except for Dex, And anyway, I just thought it was cool because it's a lovely, lovely story. Do recommend these books. So yeah, those are my favorites of Becky Chambers for sure. And I also wanted to mention Kafka on the Shore by Murakami. I love this cover, by the way. Um, because there is a trans man character in this story, and I had no idea going into it. And he's actually written really well. His name's Oshima. He's a bit strange, a bit different, not the typical
Aren't we
queer
all?
character that you would. Yeah, yeah. He's a librarian,
I love him
and he's a bit.
already.
He's very lovable, but he's also problematic, flawed, that which is great. He's a bit of a mental character to the main character. But I just wanted to mention it because again, I went into it not knowing, and I was quite delighted by discovering that he exists in this story. So a bit of an intriguing character. And very last one, and then I'll hand it back to you because now I'm going on to way too long.
You're fine.
But this
Yeah.
one, so this is a novel, a graphic novel or a comic series, Batwoman, Kate Kane, Batwoman. This one is specifically written by Greg Rucka and art by J.H. Williams III. Wonderful series. This is when they did the reboot, the New 52 at DC, way back now, probably in the 2010s, 2012s. But this one is really important because this was a retelling of Batwoman, and she's essentially a Jewish lesbian with military training. And she gets expelled from the military under the don't ask, don't tell policy at the time. And the fact that they put that in a comic book,
Mm.
mind blown to me at the time. So highly recommend all of them, not just this one. This is called Elegy, but there's a whole bunch, there's a whole arc with W. Hayden Blackman. I'll put all of the links in the show notes, but I don't read many comics these days. This one, though, really, really well done, really handled very nicely. And yeah, Batwoman, Kate Kane just kicks ass. She's just great. Okay, I'm done.
It have to be done. It's an important topic and obviously one we're quite passionate about. I still get pleasantly surprised when trans characters are in books at all. And I was just
Same.
thinking, don't have it here, but there's a trans female character, a young trans female character in City of Dust. I don't know what the series is called, but you find out that she's a young trans character and she's just someone's sister, and it's mentioned in the first book. It's not a big talking point, very small character, and then it's not mentioned in the second book at all that she's trans, which I thought was really lovely because I read the second book last year. So they mention it to give the readers of the series an idea. Here's the representation, and then after that, it's just she, her, just sister. And I thought that was really nice. Like, it's such a nice touch to be like, this person is trans.
Move on.
Move on, carry on with your life
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
trans people are just people. And anytime I haven't come across a lot, and now admittedly, there is more in my mind, and people correct me if I'm wrong if you are in the comments, young adult, which is important as well. But I know Aidan Thomas, as an example, is an author who writes trans masculine people into his stories as a trans man himself, and that is targeted at a younger audience. So they do tend to be YA, which I don't really gravitate towards personally.
Yeah.
But important that they are there, and I have considered reading some purely for the fact that the representation is there, and feeling like I owe it to trans men or trans masculine people, I should say, to go and do it. But before we head off today, and again, this is another book that I talk about a lot in terms of queer representation, is another thing of my absolute favorite is established queer relationships, because I feel like
Yes.
we really get hooked on the romance side of things. But my favorite established relationship that I've ever come across, and there is a throw to this couple in my own book because of how much I love them, is Giselle and Kalindra from The Iron Crown. They are a sapphic couple, I would say 30s, maybe late 20s, into their 30s, but established, been together for about 7 years. And there is so much love between these women, and it reminds me a lot of Rachel and I, because one's a little bit eccentric and a little bit not great at timekeeping and likes to do lots of things, has big
Gee, I wonder which one's
ideas.
which.
And Kalindra is like a straight shooter. She is down the line. She is like, I like rules and I don't want to go around them. And they get flustered with one another. Like Kalindra gets very flustered with Giselle, but you can tell that there's like underneath it all is just so beautiful. And their
Yeah.
relationship isn't the center of the story. They just happen to be a couple. And Giselle gets herself into some interesting situations that Kalindra then has to go and fix up. But at the same time, Giselle brings a lightness to this very serious character. And again, quite reminiscent of my relationship. Rachel's pays me out for being very no nonsense all the time. It's like I feel like I'm lined up a lot since being in this relationship, which is now 7 years, ironically,
Oh, wow.
as well. So it's not necessarily that it's a queer relationship, but it's such a beautiful established relationship that just
Yeah.
happens to be two women, and it's really, really lovely.
That's awesome. Those are some of my favorite genre stories where you've got something that's just very grounded in reality at the sort of not even the center of the story, just kind of like holding it all together, the glue of the story. You know, that's the thing that you can just rely on and relate to. And then you've got the world around that, you know, and that's where I think you can tell these stories in a way that sort of separates it from reality a little bit and still feel like it's real and that, you know, you can believe what's going on in the story. So that's cool to see. And that cover, by the way, is absolutely stunning.
It was only
What a
one of
lovely book.
1,000, and I just looked at
Ooh.
my number because I got on this like the second it released. I was like, I mean, the pre-order. I stayed up late to get it because I've got the like beautiful golden edges as well.
Oh, very nice.
It came Mylar wrapped, so it doesn't like deteriorate. I was number 702 out of 1,000. It sold
Wow.
out fast.
You can tell.
I'm glad
Yeah.
I didn't wait to get it the next morning, because it would have been Gonskis.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Okay, look, I mean,
Wow.
we probably still could have gone on
Oh, there's plenty I didn't mention.
for longer. Anyway, Pride Month's over, so stop being proud. Well, no, don't stop being proud.
No, never.
Don't stop being proud. Don't stop being loud about it. There's,
Yeah, now more than ever. Right?
the reason that I do it, and I won't speak for Ryan, but the reason that a lot of people do it is to just be visible and be like, you're okay.
Yeah.
You are
Yep.
okay. We exist. I know we
We
mentioned
exist.
it before, but both of us are available. If you want to speak to someone, please, by all means, do. So,
Yep.
to watch the video of the podcast, head on over to Genre Blender Podcast on YouTube. Audio only versions are available on Apple and Spotify, so pick whatever your podcast app of choice is. You'll find all the show notes for anything we mentioned in the description box down below. You can follow the podcast on @Genre Blender Podcast on Instagram for clips of the show, or visit genreblenderpodcast.com for all our social media links across the web. If you want to follow me, you can follow me over at A Fictional Escapist, and Ryan is Ryan.Floyd when they choose to use it. At the moment, a little bit quiet on socials, but we are there. Those links will be down below as well if you want to go ahead and check it out.
And to all the world hoppers out there, we wish you safe travels and happy Pride Month for the remainder of it. We've still got a little bit to go. And we'll catch you in the next episode, which will be a little bit of a departure from storytelling specific episodes. And we're talking a little bit more about the mediums on which we experience these stories, to do with the death of physical media, with a bit of a mystery special guest.
We say as we hold up all our physical media, like in this episode. Interesting topic, though.
Yes. Yeah, it's an important one right now. But until then, take care, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Ciao.